So here we are. We're at that place in time where the president reflects and encourages at the end of a year filled with extraordinary undertakings and memorable moments from trips and events, both across the country and around the world. In that process, been making new friends and learning and laughing with each of you. But first, I want to thank my wife, Valerie, for being with me on this journey. I also want to thank my family for checking in and also joining us along the way. I need to thank my firm back in Reno for keeping the lights on while I was gone. And all of you, my Nevada board colleagues, my Region 6 friends, and this entire body for your participation and encouragement in our efforts to go farther. Almost immediately after last year's annual business meeting, I had the privilege of representing you at the American Institute of Architecture Students grassroots event in Washington, D.C. Meeting with the future of our profession and being infused with a healthy dose of their unbridled optimism and enthusiasm was a perfect way to kick off a year of ambitions and ventures into new programs and initiatives. Also having the opportunity to participate with them at their forum event in December cemented my belief that the next generation will be great stewards both of the profession and the public trust. This past year afforded me the opportunity to represent you at a number of international gatherings, starting with the International Union of Architects in Seoul, South Korea. In addition to the multicultural aspect of participating in a gathering of architects from around the world, this event afforded us the ability to gain insight and perspective on how the process of blending education, experience, and examination into a licensure process is handled in other countries. I can assure you that the process of licensure, crafted by our 54 jurisdictions, is as rigorous and comprehensive as any in the world. On a personal note, another highlight of the trip was participating in the political process that resulted in my friend, AIA past president Tom Vernier, being elected as president of the UIA. We also traveled to London to initiate a new reciprocity opportunity with the United Kingdom, and also recently to Oaxaca, Mexico, to reinforce our relationship with our friends south of the border in our tri-national agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. My takeaway from both of these experiences is that architects and architectural regulators outside the U.S. have great esteem for not only how we incorporate rigor into our process, but also how our process remains agile and evolving. Both the Mexicans and the Canadians are very curious about our integrated path to architectural license initiative, our IPAL program, and our other certification programs and their different alternative paths. On that last note, let me throw a compliment your way. In the past 2 years, since we moved from the old BEA and BEFA programs to our newer certification alternatives, the response has been overwhelming. We are already way past the totals reached over the previous 2 decades within the old programs, meeting our strategic goal to facilitate licensure. Along with this trend, NCARB and its member boards are seeing record numbers participating in licensure and the licensure pipelines, certainly in part due to a good economy, but also due to our reinvented programs that are more relevant and more logical to those who are attracted to our profession. This bodes well for the future, and more importantly, it reinforces the value of what we do to protect the public. And as a sidebar, thanks to this strong pipeline, which continues to exceed all of our expectations, you will be hearing during the course of our discussions over the next few days that this was also good news regarding our budget. This new and compelling story of interest in both the architectural profession and the need for architectural services has given us new ammunition and new inspiration in our efforts to combat ill-informed attempts at diluting the role of regulation. Thanks to our team of staff, local professionals, and many of you, efforts to undermine our licensure framework have been subdued. The national conversation regarding the value of regulation is appropriately refocusing on a discussion that informs the distinction between professional licensure and occupational certification, and the appropriate role of reasonable regulation in each. We have helped articulate this transformation, and it's been my privilege over the last year to both encourage and support these successful efforts. Earlier this year, I enjoyed the opportunity to visit my alma mater, Ball State University in Indiana. I was accompanied by one of this year's medal recipients, our former exams assistant director, Mr. Ryan Meisner, who was also a Ball State grad. Ryan and I met with students, hosted an outreach event, and heard a newer and increasingly familiar refrain. Simply put, it's that our programs are more realistic and more relevant and more accessible, and are doing a better job of preparing people to qualify for licensure. Every time I ask the question, who wants to get licensed and who wants to practice, almost all of the hands in the room were raised. Now this may sound obvious, but let's think about this for a moment. It wasn't that long ago that complaints about the exam, the old IDP program, and the general inflexibility and inefficiency of the licensure process was a common occurrence. Now, when we do surveys, when we talk with folks in the field and monitor social media, in itself a great improvement, we hear words of praise and we hear words of thanks. And that's due to all of you. Over the years, you and your colleagues on committees and elected board members have seen fit to refine, evolve, and reinvent our licensure toolbox in a way that is making a meaningful difference. I mentioned the IPAL program a moment ago. Let me tell you another story. It's about a trip we took just a few months ago. This one was to Orlando, Florida, to participate in the convocation ceremonies celebrating the first graduates to complete the IPAL program at the University of Florida's Orlando City Lab. There were 13 members in the graduating class, but there were 3 graduates who had taken long breaks in their career path before entering the Master's Architecture program and completed their AXP and passed all 6 sections of the ARE by the time they graduated. Shortly thereafter, these 3 have been licensed by the Florida Board. In addition, we've had similar graduations in North Carolina. This is just the beginning, folks. In the coming years, we will see scores of others doing the same thing. Currently, there are over 400 students enrolled in IPAL programs across the country, and over 60 are currently testing. This is no longer an idea, it's reality. This program is not only providing an opportunity to pursue a concentrated, overlapping path that preserves all the same rigor, but it is also pulling people back into licensure who had otherwise given up hope. The Orlando City Lab program is also an example of how the two-year community college system can be integrated into an IPAL program, allowing students with financial challenges a local and affordable option for both an architectural education and an integrated path to licensure. Now, we have much to discuss and consider at this annual meeting, both in immediate business and also where our travels may take us in the future. This year, we have delivered to you resolutions which look to further refine our policies and our programs. We have enacted on the recommendations of the Ethics Task Force by proposing a refresh and revival of our rules of conduct. We are handing off recommendations from our resilience work group into the NCARB bloodstream via committee charges and staff assignments. Both these groups sunsetted in December, but they continue and stand as evidence of how the work of the council continues in our never-ending desire to go further. And go further we shall, with new initiatives in the areas of public outreach, supervisor training, a professional practice survey, NCARB Scholars in Professional Practice, the NCARB Creativity in Academy Award, and new engagement with recently licensed architects in our Rethink Tank. We are tossing new pebbles into the pond, and who knows where those ripples are going to take us. As evidenced by the collateral organizations who are joining us here this week, we've continued our efforts to build coalitions both inside the architecture world and farther afield to other regulatory bodies, including those supporting engineering, landscape architecture, interior design, and code compliance. I stood up an interior architecture work group which is seeking a path forward on how to respond and provide useful and implementable perspectives on titles and scopes. Thanks to President-elect Hoffman, I'll be joining this group as board liaison in the coming year. And speaking of your incoming president, I must acknowledge Dave Hoffman, my wingman this year, as an essential partner, a meticulous and dedicated volunteer, and a wonderful friend. He and the rest of your devoted board of directors have worked tirelessly, fearlessly, and frankly, and engaged in thoughtful, in-depth discussions about issues on the horizon which impact our financial health, our strategic focus, our programmatic priorities, and the necessities of disciplinary action and clearer policies. As I've said previously, our meetings have been very full, very robust, but they've been very rewarding. I must also thank our CEO, Mike Armstrong, for his dedication and hard work on behalf of this organization. During the course of the year, we spent a lot of time together traveling, talking, emailing, and texting. Throughout this incredible journey, Mike has had great patience and perception in knowing when and how to engage my participation as I balanced the challenges of the role of president with still running my practice. And the successes of this organization would not be possible without the efforts of our amazing staff, our amazing and extremely dedicated and unselfish team of committee members and volunteers, and the ongoing engagement of all of you in this room as members and member board executives. Today, NCARB stands at the threshold of its second century. For nearly 100 years, we've been working to provide our licensing board members with the best tools our collective efforts can provide. We've encouraged debate. We've questioned relevance and whether things are working effectively. And we have become increasingly better at telling our story. A year ago, I spoke of aspirations to strive for a better tomorrow. I believe we've accomplished much towards that goal, but every new day presents a new opportunity. So now is not the time to say goodbye, but rather to say, keep pushing. Keep striving for that better tomorrow. Our world is changing rapidly, and we must do our best to adapt to this era of accelerations. A while back, our CEO asked a number of us to read Thomas Friedman's book, Thank You for Being Late, which I noticed my friend AIA President Carl Elefante quoted in his recent Architect magazine column. Friedman calls out regulation, and yes, even architecture, in his discussion of how to recalibrate the relationship between human capacity to adapt and the ever-quickening pace of change spurred by technology. And I don't know about you, but as I was walking through that museum last night, it was a clear indication of how fast things have changed and how quickly they evolve. So, let's do that. Let's stay ahead of constant change as the norm and get comfortable with how that can work for us instead of against us. We are learning how to better communicate with our stakeholders, our elected officials, and those who rely on the valuable services provided by our profession. We have a compelling story to tell. Our story is not only relevant and persuasive, it's the right story. Thank you. Thank all of you for your part in making it so.